Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. It's April the 16th and we're looking at 2 Samuel and chapter 4. Now, in chapter 4, we have the end of the dynasty of Saul. Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, that is Ishbosheth. He heard that Abner was dead. Now Abner was his main army captain. His hands were feeble and all the Israelites were troubled. Now Saul's son had 2 men that were captains of bands. The name of the one was Baanah and the name of the other was Rechab. And they were sons of Rimmon, a Beerothite, of the children of Benjamin. And Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame in his feet. He was 5 years old when the tidings came to Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. And it came to pass, when she made haste to flee, that he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. We'll see this person come again later in the story with David. And the sons of Rimmon, they came from, as it were, the heat of the day into the house of Ishbosheth, who lay on his bed at noon. And they came in and they killed him there. They killed him on his bed and they beheaded him. And they took his head and they brought it to David. And they said, "Behold the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul thine enemy, which sought thy life. The Lord hath avenged my lord the king this day of Saul and of his seed." Do you see, they thought that they would receive a great reward. They thought that they would receive a commendation. But David said, "As the Lord liveth, who hath redeemed my soul out of all adversity." And David said, when the tidings came of the death of Saul, he says, "I took that man and slew him in Ziklag, who thought that I had given him a tidings that would bring a reward. How much more then, when wicked men have slain a righteous man in his own house upon his bed? Shall I not therefore now require his blood of your hand and take it away from the earth?" And so David commanded the young men, and they slew these 2 men, these wicked men. He slew them there and he hanged them up. Now in chapter 5 we have the beginning properly of David's reign, his unchallenged reign. Then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and said, "Behold, we are thy bone and flesh. Also in time past, when Saul was king over us, thou wast he that led us and brought us to Israel. And the Lord said to thee, Thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be captain over Israel." So you see, the kings of Israel had 2 things that they did. First is that they fed the children of Israel, and the second thing is that they led the children of Israel, especially in times of battle. So all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 40 years. And in Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem to the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spoke to David, saying, "Except you take away the blind and the lame, you will not come here," thinking that David wouldn't come because of that. However, David took the stronghold of Zion. The same is the city of David. Now the stronghold of Zion, I presume that is referring to Jerusalem, and it became the city of David. It's very interesting that David had Bethlehem, which was also his city, and Ziklag was his city, but on this occasion I think it's referring to Jerusalem itself. It is the famous city of all time. David said on that day, "Whosoever getteth up to the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites and the lame and the blind that are hated of David's soul, he shall be chief and captain." It's very interesting that David didn't just appoint people because he thought they'd be a good people. He promoted them in relation to the good things that they did with him and for him. It says David dwelt in the fort and called it the city of David. I presume that at that time it was a relatively small thing. It probably was not a stone city with stone walls. It probably may have had a stone foundation, which was the common thing, but it had probably a balustrade of timber, so it was like a typical fort like we would have in the Wild West. David built round about Millo and inward, and David went on and grew great, and the Lord of hosts was with him. See, now this is one of my passwords for today. I have a number of passwords for today, but verse 10 says, "The Lord of hosts was with him." You see, and this is the great thing about David. He had God with him in all that he did. And David became very prosperous. Hiram, the king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house. And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over all Israel, and that he has exalted his kingdom for the people of Israel's sake. You see, David wasn't king for his own sake. David was king for the sake of the people. David knew that it wasn't just to make him wealthy or to powerful. He was made king that he might look after Israel, that he might feed them, and that he might protect them. And David took more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem. It's very interesting that just yesterday in our Q&A session we had this question about what is a concubine. A concubine is somebody that's a wife. She has all of the privileges and duties of a wife in ordinary life, except that she might be a slave, for example. And if she's a slave, then it means that she's unable to come into the full inheritance that David would have normally for his wives and for their children. So he has concubines and he has wives, and then it lists their names. But I have two more little passages which I'd like to bring to your attention. It says, "And when the Philistines heard that David was anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines came to seek David, and David heard it and went down to the hold." You see, the Philistines, as soon as they knew that he was king, they thought, right, now we know what we've got to do. We've got to go and conquer this king. And the Philistines came and they spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord. That's my password. David inquired of the Lord. When we look at the life of David from beginning to end, we see that this is a key feature. Whenever a crisis occurs in his life, he doesn't do like Saul, just think of the best that he should do. No. David inquired of the Lord. He wanted a word from the Lord to guide him. And his question was, "Shall I go up to the Philistines, and will you deliver them into my hand?" See? And the Lord said to David, "Go, because I will doubtless deliver. Without any doubt I will deliver the Philistines into thy hand." And David came to Baal Pezorim, and David smote them there, and said, "The Lord has broken forth upon mine enemies before me as a breach of waters." You see, David's battle was like a flood, which just completely washed everything away in front of him. And David burnt their images, and David and his men had complete victory. Then the Philistines came up again, and they spread themselves again in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord again, and he said, "Shall I go up and fetch a compass from behind them, and come over against them, against the mulberry trees, and let it be?" The Lord and the Lord said, "You will go up and you will encompass them." So the Lord gives to David the battle strategy. You're to surround them. And when you hear a sound in the tops of the mulberry trees, then you will stir yourself, for then shall the Lord go out before thee to stir the host, to smite the host of the Philistines. Notice that on this occasion, the Lord gives to David the actual strategy, the tactics of the battle, and he also gives him the timing of the battle. We all know that one of the most important features of a battle is its timing. That's one of the most important things. And notice what it says in verse 25. It says, "David did so as the Lord commanded him." You see, under law, David was under law. He was in the old covenant. And under law, he had a duty to do what God commanded him. And that's exactly what he did here. And this is the great contrast between Saul and David. Saul eventually learned to seek a word from the Lord. He eventually learned to seek the Lord's guidance. But David always inquired of the Lord. And David did what the Lord commanded him. What a lesson for us all. Well, God bless you. Great to speak to you. And I look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow. Bye for now.